All right, good morning, everyone. So, in this video, we'll talk about the Hellmall. Obviously, it's been talked about a ton in general. I think it's one of the defining models of Warriors of the Gods. I personally have never played without one. I don't see myself playing without one. I don't. I do think it can work without one if you use like elders and stuff like that. I don't know. I just don't see myself not using one. I think it's too dynamic. I think it's too interesting in what it adds to the game. And if you're not playing one, then it feels like you might as well play ogres, and they do the same shit but better, um, roughly. As I said, can work, but I like using one. So I've always played with one. Still getting better about using it. I think there's a learning curve in where you put your portals and what you actually do with the Hellmaul and to really get the most out of it. And it has seen some point changes over time. The double portal has gone up. I believe it was 25 in the last edition of it, and the single portal went up 15. But the single mall without any portals went down. So here's the Hell Mall, 260 base, 95, and then 200. So one thing we'll talk about is what the best combination of Hell Mall and portals are. Let's look at its stats. So it's a giant construct. So it's not you can't stomp, which is probably good for the fact that it is. For even 355, it was a stompable monster with 5 strength 5, and it put down portals. It might be a little too good. I do think that I personally undervalue. What's the word? I think that not being able to stomp is way worse than it actually is, because if you think about, say, a giant or something, a lot of units in this game can't be stomped, right? You can't stomp ogres, you can't stomp knights, you can't stomp other monsters. So there's a lot of things where you just can't stomp them anyway. So it doesn't matter that you can't stomp, like, right? Would you still charge this X or Y model into the flank? Um, so yes, it's not great versus infantry as maybe it could be, but it is what it is. So it's 510, not the fastest. This 5 kind of sucks if you're trying to march it on its own, or if you have to take a supernal check. Obviously, it doesn't get rerolls either, so it's a little bit risky in combats. If it loses, it's likely going to fail the check unless you have your general nearby. Has 5 resistance 5 with 5 up armor and 5 aegis. So obviously, again, not the hardest thing in the world to kill, not the easiest to kill. 5 strength 5 attacks, AP 2, agility 1. Slow, couple attacks that are decent. It's also it's gigantic, so it causes terror. And it has a rank, which is actually kind of nice when you flank with it, right? A charging in the flank with a super rank is 3 res to start with, whether you do wounds or not. And it is tough enough that if you were to flank something, you'd probably win combat. So, not the most impressive stat line, but, it starts at 260 points, and obviously people don't take it for the stat line. They take it for the abilities. You can take 1 or 2 gateways, and we kind of know how gateways work. You can go in them, you can walk out of them. Yeah, you take hits if you go through them. Only certain units go through them. Blah blah blah. So, what I think this video wants to be about is so let's assume you're gonna take a Hellmaul, right? Because otherwise, the point of this video is. So you have some choices, right? You have one Hellmaul. So what are the choices? You have single Hellmaul, no portals. So just basically just one Hellmaul at 260. One Hellmaul with 1 portal, which is the most common at the moment. One Hellmaul with 2 portals, and then I won't say the new method, but because one guy, I think Turkey or something, took 2 Hellmauls. But I think one thing that's becoming a little more popular idea is 2 Hellmauls that are naked without any portals to start. So essentially, just 260 points. If that's the most expensive, it's only 60 more points than starting with 2 gateways, and it obviously has some benefits and some downsides compared to 2 gateways. It's it's 200 points more than a Hellmaul with 1 portal. So there's well, it's only 520 versus 3. It's only 770 points more than a Hellmaul with 1 portal, and obviously 260 more than Hellmaul with no portals. So I think the extreme is Hellmaul with no portals, and then so in that case, I think you're taking a much more speedy army. Maybe you don't have many things to teleport early. And why do you want to take a Helm Wall? Well, it's 260 points, right? It's a big ass unit that can get flanks and stuff. It's not the fastest, but it's like a big terror calls for 260, right? A Chaos Chariot is 225, and they're not that comparable because impact hits and stuff. But in a way, five. They both toughness 5. One has a ward save, one has a 3-up armor save, so it's close. This is more HP. Chosen Chariot's obviously faster and does impact hits, but this one is 5 strength 5. The Chosen or not Chosen, normal Chariot is 4 strength 5 with some strength 4. So there are some similarities in like if they were fighting units, they're not that much different. And then you kind of have this added bonus of if it survives, like if it dies, it's 260, whatever. If it survives by turn 3, 4, 5, 6, when kind of scenarios matter, you might be able to get portals in place to make a difference. Obviously, you can't make your list depending on portals being amazing, but if you're throwing down portals, maybe you put one in a good place to blow it up, and then it's still a 260 point model. If you drop a portal down first turn in front of the enemy army and they walk over it, and then you blow it up and you do a bunch of toxic hits, maybe it is worth it. Because the thing is, like, for 260, it seems very good on its own. Like, right? It's just like, okay, what other unit are you buying that has the potential to like port your units around? Now, obviously, if you take all shit that can't be ported, then maybe points are too tight and you can't fit it, right? But I feel like even a naked Hellmaw, if you're taking like a chariot, right, for 225, if you can find 35 points for a naked Hellmaw and you have at least 1 or 2 units to port, I think the potential there is pretty good. The one gateway version, most popular, the one I've played the most, and we'll go to UB. So, UB, what typically happens when you do this is you put a portal. I'm generalizing. It's not always the way. There's a lot more deployment enemy army. But you get the idea. You put a portal usually like over here somewhere, and then you put your maul closer to whichever one. You should deploy it like this, but we'll just say I deployed it straight up because whatever. You put a maul like here, and the idea being is if your army is on this side of the board, you can advance. You advance the maul like 10 inches, and then your first portal is probably around here, depending on where your army is. And then the next turn, you go another 10 inches, and you throw a portal like back here. It depends on a lot, right? Here, maybe here. Depends on what you need to do, but it's kind of like the first 2 turns it's kind of telegraphed, where you kind of walk up, throw one in your lines, so that your advancing army has the opportunity to go over there, and then you can throw one in the back for later on and to threaten people and stuff like that. So that's how the single one starts. You get the action started on turn 2, essentially, potentially. Now, I do think army composition around the portal also influences what you want to start with, right? So I think something like the Forsworn Bus was very popular and is still pretty popular, and it's gone up in points. I think that kind of influences maybe the idea that 2 portals is really good, right? So in 2 portals, you would maybe put one here, and you put one like here in front of your army, and then if you had some army to walk into it, now you're really fucking with people's deployments. The first one, when you put this one down, they can deploy on it, they can try to block it. They're scared but not scared of it. When you put 2 down, if you're going first, they have to respect what's coming out of that portal. And that's an army where sometimes you take maybe a Forsworn block and maybe a warrior unit with a Portent Lord and maybe a chariot, maybe knights. Enough threats that, and you don't even have to have that many threats, but enough threats that where, like, if they put a unit of spears, you can drop, your Forsworn out of it, and they can't fuck with it. If they put something that can mess with chariots, or if they put their whole army over here, maybe you drop your knights here, and then you come around the flank, and so it was all about options. At least when I played with it, because depending on how they deployed, you would send something in it or not send something in it. And sometimes it would be blocked. Sometimes they would vanguard on top of it, or you have to be careful if they're going first. One thing I kind of messed up a lot was if my 2 starting portals were here, if they went first, they might vanguard move onto my portal, and then they basically chaff my units like people normally do, but they also chaff my portal. So there's like a downside there as well. This messes with people the most. I think the middle ground is 1 portal, because you put 1 here and then you kind of go from there, and you're not spending 460 points. 2, I think you're starting to commit. You put your 2 portals down. You got to be smart about it because it's hard to move them, and then you kind of walk up and throw 1 here, or it all depends. And then now you have this. It's 460 points for him. If he dies, your portals go away. So there is a little bit more incentive to go after the Hell Maw. And then by turn 4, so this video is going to be also kind of trying to convince myself that maybe 2 Maws that are naked is potentially better than 1 Maw that has 2 portals, right? Because that's the better it's 60 points difference for those 2. If you're going to go 1 portal, 1 Maw, or 1 Maw, 1 portal, then I think it's not a stretch to get to the 2. But it's a little bit more of an army change. So I'm trying to compare 1 Maw with 2 portals and 2 Maws with 0 portals. So by turn 4, you have all your portals out if you choose to, or turn 3. And then turn 4, you can blow 1 up. Turn 5, you can put 1 down. And turn 6, you can blow 1 up. So essentially, you're blowing up twice. Not max. You can blow up more if you don't need your portals. You also have all your, I won't say eggs in a basket of 1 Maw, but in the sense of if your Maw dies, the portal dies, and it's worth 460. So the big advantage of 2 portals is you start with, you can teleport turn 1. And then by turn 2, you have 3 portals down. And so if we contrast that with something like 2 Maws that are naked, so let's say you deploy 1 on either side. So what are the downsides to this? Well, the first being is when you put down your first portal, it can be obviously outside the enemy's deployment zone. So you could put 1 here. And see, it's not as bad with 2 Maws because it's very rare that your first one you put down is going to be, how am I trying to say this? When you put down a portal, it has to be within 6 inches of the enemy, out of 6 inches of the enemy. So I think it's very rare if you're going first that your first portal you would have placed is that much farther than what your Maw could put down first turn anyway. It's not like you don't always put it down like right here, and then the enemy lines up here, and then you have to put your portal here instead, right? So I don't think that's a detriment. Obviously, when you only have 1 Maw and 1 portal, putting 1 on the flank is nice because this Maw is never going to get over here to put it down. So I don't think the fact that you can put your first one down, outside the deployment anywhere you want is that much of a detriment, because your Maws can pretty much cover, it's 24 inches plus, it's like 34 inches, right? So it can pretty much cover where you want if you deploy it properly. So we'll say that downside is kind of nullified. The other upside to 2 is you can go in turn 1. I mean, that's really the upside. Let's just be fair. The biggest upside of turn 2 of 2 Maws, 2 portals, is you can go in first turn, and turn 2 you have 3 down instead of 2. Right? If you look at the progression of portals, turn 0. So turn 1 you can go in. Turn 2 you have 2 down. Right? 2 units can go in. So, and then turn 3 you have 4 down. When you take double Maw, turn 1 you have 0 down, so no ports turn 1. Turn 2 you can port 1 unit. Right, 1, 2. And then turn 3 you have them all down. So after turn 2, you're the same. At least is how many portals you have. So in the first 2 turns, a double Maw list can port 3 units total in the first 2 turns, and a double gateway list. I need better words for these units. Maw gateway, right? Can port 3, and double Maw can only port 1 unit. All right, so for early porting, it's I'll say better to have obviously the 2 gateway one, because you get 3 units potentially versus just the one. Now, once you hit turn 3, you have all your portals down, and now because on turn 3 you put down, because it's actually faster. So by the end of turn 2, you have them all down for both of them. So now you're hitting turn 3, and so this is where I think the double one can potentially shine a lot more. Is not only just blowing these things up, but you can reposition, like it's a 2-for-1 thing, right? So if I have 4 portals down, right, like this, wherever you put them, I can, let's say, depending on the flow of the battle, right, and it's probably actually a lot harder to use too, like, to be fair, because you have to really think about the game a little more, is, okay, he's not here anymore, the battle's over here. I'm going to blow up this one and then put a new one down over here, right, potentially. And so every turn you can take one away and put one down if you want, even if, and then it starts becoming the threat of, what if I throw one in the middle of his army turn 1, just right in front of him? Now I'm not risking, he knows I'm not going to port on it, but that's okay because I have these other ones. But now the risk is I'm going to blow this one up and put one down over here, and do D6 toxic hits everything. And so every turn I can blow one up and reposition, depending on where the malls are, blowing up, reposition. And then now you can start throwing ones down if you think, and you have to think ahead about where you're going to port later in the game and stuff. But you can essentially just start repositioning portals. And now, because I said when you have single mall and 2 portals, this is turn 3, right? If this is turn 3, if you blow this one up, right? We did the math. It was turn 3 blow up, turn 4 put down, turn 5 blow up, and then maybe turn 6 blow up. So you can blow up 3, but you only have 2 left at the end of the game. So a lot of times you don't want to blow them up because they're in good positions. Whereas, turn 2, you have all of them down. Turn 3, you blow up, put down. Turn 4, you essentially, and then turn 6, you can just blow up 2 if you need to. And you can blow up 2 if you ever need to anyway, right? If you had 2 perfect, let's say you put 2 portals here. So it starts to create a kind of interesting game because you put like 2 portals here and the enemy walks on them, let's say it was something like this. And you just said, all right, I'm going to blow these 2 up, knowing that you're not going to port as much next turn and then put them down. You can start using them as little like landmines for some armies if you're not going to port a lot. It makes people risk standing on them, which is kind of an issue because if you're like, all right, if you're going to cover it with 2 units of fast cav and I'm just going to blow it up and do some wounds, there's a lot of threat there. So I think you start getting into play of you sacrifice the early portaling of your units in place of blowing up, and it's a 6-inch bubble. This is a 3-inch bubble. So if we went, 1, 2, that's the range right there. It's a pretty nice little thing for some armies where you're just like toxic hits, and you can hit your own shit, but you just gotta be smart with it. So maybe that's a play for 2. So that we'll chalk that up of, if you think about the game flow, if your army isn't right, if my army doesn't have a unit that wants to port turn 1, like sure, if I have a Portent Lord and a unit of warriors with a war shrine, and I do this and this, it's nice to port here. But if he puts something here that fights me better, or all the way over here, maybe I don't want to do it. So, and a second case for the double maul is, let's think about it like this. When I put 2 portals down to start, we know where I'm going to be, right? We know that I have a portal here, and if you're smart and know how warriors play, there's a good chance I'm putting my army here, right? And you don't know where these are. There's a good chance I'm putting my army here, and I'm going to try to sweep this flank and teleport this way, right? So either you're going to see me put my army down, or let's say you get to go first, you might back off here, put all your models here, right? I wish I had more enemy models out, but I don't, right? So maybe you defend this one or step on it. But when if it's, I don't have any portals to start, and I just put my Hellmauls on the flanks, right? Well, now, if you deploy your army here, I could do this and this, right? But I'll know where you are. So what if you deploy your army on this side, maybe I go, this one puts it here, and this one walks up 10 inches and puts it here, right? If depending on where your army is. So now I get to see where your units are before I put down my first two portals. And yes, I have to be 6 inches away, and I'm slightly limited in movement and stuff. But there's kind of a big advantage there because I'm not limited by where I put my first two. Like right here, once I drop these, I'm limited like in where my portals are for the rest of the game. These two are always going to be there. If you deploy your whole army in this corner, maybe there's an advantage for me there depending on where I deployed, but I can't react to it that fast, right? This portal over here may always be useless or something like that. Or where are my main units going to be? I don't know. So being able to, I'll put it against smart opponents and not having like a big ass bust like for the Forsworn. I've noticed that sometimes my first portal, I don't even get to go in it anyway, right? So when I was counting the number of units that get to port, if your opponent's super smart, like there's a point where you're just not getting that first portal anyway. They're just not letting you do it effectively, or you port in, they look at so maybe there's a fear in deployment here, but think of the fear of like I just have two maws and you will have no idea where my markers are gonna go. And I'm just gonna, then you start putting them down and they're like, oh shit, they don't have time to react, and you can react to their movement. Now, like I said, I think it takes a lot more, not a lot more, I think it takes more thought. And then obviously it's 60 more points, but not only for 60 points. If you think about that, you get to blow up more portals. Is it worth 60 points to blow up a couple portals? But also you get probably now I don't lose my Helm all too often. I will say I don't lose it too often. But there are people that go after it and kill it, and then I lose my portals. The thing about double Helmaw is turn 2, as long as they survive turn 1 and you're not like an idiot and lose them both instantly, or lose any of them instantly. If they both survive turn 1, boom, boom, portal, portal. If this one was to die, there's no difference between where you're other than where they are on the board. There's no difference between having a Helmaw with one portal in this position right here. Right? You just start putting down single portals, and then he's the same exact thing. Because once you pay the price for the first one, it doesn't matter. Now, obviously, you paid a lot of points for two of them, and it's different. But also, I think there's an untapped potential in myself and in others where this Helmaw is, as we talked about in the stat line, is 5 strength, 5 attacks. It's a terror-causing monster. It has a rank, it's stubborn, which is actually pretty good if you can keep it in general's range, because being stubborn versus like flyers and stuff like that means it's a lot harder to, they win by 2 and then you freaking make your check on a 9 and you're still there. But, if this is 260 points and they have to kill both of them to lose your portals, right? So there's a point where if turn 2 you have 4 portals down and you're trying to mess with them, there's it's less incentive for the enemy to go after your maws unless they can get both of them, because if they just kill one, sure, you lose the ability to blow them up and do as many crazy moves with that. But if they go after one, it's 260 points in an army that has a lot of units that are worth a lot and strong, because it's not the best fighter, but it's 260 points, and the fucking portals don't go away. And then you're like, okay, I got to be a little more conservative for my other one, and it's unlikely that they can. It's not unlikely. I don't like using that word because it could always. Every game's different, but if you put one on either side of the board, it's usually when one dies, it like gets trapped by something, and I'm like running away. It's probably unlikely that they can get both of them easily, especially being a single model monster that moves, and your whole other army like fighting them at the same time. Like you gotta remember, you have Feldrakes and elders and warriors and knights that are moving up the board and defending your mauls in a weird way in Magic. So it's 10 wounds they have to kill now. It's less likely a fluke spell takes out your Hellmaw, and now all of a sudden. So I played a game where I had a 2 portal maw and it died to like 2 swarm of insects. It can happen. It's very unlikely, but it can happen. Well, if that was, if I double maul, it wouldn't probably be worth going after them, because you're probably not going to get one with 2 swarm of insects, let alone, but the win of getting both of them is very small. And as I said, now that you have the advantage of if you put these two down first turn, and now all of a sudden, he jumps on this one with some fast cav or jumps on this one, there's maybe incentive where you're like, you can say to yourself, before you can say, I can't blow it up, because if I was to blow up this one, and now I only have, I can't make up for it fast enough. But now you can say, all right, I'll blow this one up. It's worth the hits. I'll put a new one down here, and it's like you can rely on the portals, but in a weird way, you're forcing the enemy to deal with them, and then you decide whether it's worth it, right? Because they can't just leave them all the time, right? If they just leave them there and they're like, all right, port away, I'm not going to stop you. All right, you just port, and then you have an advantage. If they try to stop the portal by stepping on it or attacking it with a unit so that you come out, then you say, all right, I'm not going to go in it. I'm going to go somewhere else. There's been times where, you port a unit here, let's say here, and then the enemy turns all their units to face you, and then you just leave and port somewhere else. And now they've wasted a whole turn looking at you, and you're repositioning elsewhere. So, yeah, wow. So when you really think about two Maws versus two Portal, if you don't, I think with the downfall, at least in my list, of the Forsworn block, if you really think through how the game progresses in the turns, it's probably worth 60 points to have double Maws, because they went down. You got to remember, like, ETC, it was 540 for two and 445 for a single Maw with two portals. So it was a 95-point difference. It's only 60 now. And it's cheaper than it was before. Like, it's 60. The difference is 60. It's sometimes about the difference, right? Like, the War DS is more points now. And now a Steed for your Lord becomes an interesting option, because not just because the War DS went up and it's not worth it, it's still worth the points, but the difference between the two is much different. So if you're only going to pay 60 points for the extra Maw, maybe it's worth it. I also think the dynamic of the armies changed enough that, and people are getting better at playing, or at least in theory, that they're going to play around the two portals better. And I still don't think two portals is bad. I think there are some lists that want two portals, and I still need to test it more. This is more of a reasoning of why I think there's potential for double Maw, and I wasn't the one to think of this. Other people have suggested it to me more. But the more I think about it, I'm curious to see how I think if you're going to use double Maw, you have to be able to anticipate your enemy's movement a little more, because you're probably going to blow up your portals a lot more. And so you might be putting portals in a way of like 2 for 1, where it's like, all right, I'm right here. If you're going to walk on it, if you're going to advance, I'm going to blow it up. And, if you're not going to advance, then I'm going to port or something like that, right? And obviously putting your portals down on the flanks, but also using your Maws. Now you're spending 500 points on two monsters that are cheaper than giants, and obviously are very different because they don't thunderstomp, but they're still 5 strength 5 with flanks and stuff. I think you have to use your Maws in some form of threatening way, right? You can just because, it probably does justify the 60 points if you're just blowing up. If you blow up 3 portals and hit enough units, this probably justifies the 60-point difference than the single Maw with 2 portals. But I do think even when I play with my single Hell Maw, I want to try to take advantage of the fact that they are monsters that can charge and clip and provide ranks and hold things up for the rest of my army to come in. Because if a Helmwall charges, it's likely it's not going to die on the charge, and then you can kind of lock things down for the next turn. But then you don't risk, if you do it with one of them, you can be a little more risky with one, because if you lose this one, you still got your portals here. So I think there's some play to be had with two. But also, I think people should consider, I was just thinking while I was talking, there's a lot of lists I see that maybe take a giant or let's take a Feldrak army, right? There's some Feldrak armies out there that have, well, depends on the build, but let's say you have warriors and 2 big Feldrak units, and then maybe ancients. Let's say no ancestors, but depending if you change your build a little. Some people take like a chariot or something. If you turn a chariot into a Hellmaw, a naked Hellmaw, you can port Feldrax, they only take like a half a wound on average. So, like, just having this guy walk around, throw a portal, next turn 2, throw another portal, and maybe turn 3, and now all of a sudden you spend 260 points on a monster that if your Feldrax unit, like, the blockiness of armies. Where's my Feldrax? That's my elders. But the blockiness of that army can cause issues. But if you're like, running up the board here and the enemy deployed over here, you're never going to make it over there. But maybe you brought a Hellmaul and you put it in the middle and you said, all right, if they kill it, it's 260 points. It's as hard to kill as a chariot, right? And you say, all right, well, I'm going to throw a portal, I don't know, here for my unit in case. And then second turn, you're going to throw one here. And then all of a sudden, this unit kills something and it ports, and now it's over here. If you just port once and the monster maybe does something solid, or port twice, it's hard for me to look at a list and say, I can't find 260 points for a single Hellmaul with no portals. And I know there are lists that it's not good in, and there's people that don't take it, and that's fine. And like if you have a dragon and 2 elders and stuff, I get it. But even some of these double Feldrake lists that have like a warrior block and core, it feels like they could potentially use a Maul with no portals and just turn 3, 4, 5, 6, just for scenarios, just threatening things, just being like putting portals down and being like, all right, you have to think ahead. I don't like the excuse that it's too hard to use. That's the one I hear too often. Where it's like, it's too hard to use, it's too much thinking, it's a game inside the game. Well, fucking, that's such a shitty reason. If that's your reason, then you're not good enough for me to worry about why you care about your opinion. And I'm not trying to make fun of people that don't use one, but if your reason is you don't like it and you don't want to use it, sure. But this idea that, and some people don't like to use it because maybe they don't think it's fun because it is too, I'll say quote unquote, too hard to use or too much thinking and whatever. But I'm more talking about like ETC level shit where if that's your reason, if you have other reasons where your list is just too fast and it's not worth it, sure. But if your reason is just it's too hard to use, then I don't think that's good enough reason. I think there's too much that can be done even with a single Maul. And what I want to test out is the double Maul. I think it requires a little more advanced thinking but also on the fly thinking, which I like, because turn 1 you can do what you want, and then also taking advantage of the blowing up, so you have to think a little harder there. And lastly, you take advantage of actually using the Maul as a piece of, turn 3 you're here potentially, and maybe you're threatening flanks along with your other units. I think you really got to get the most out of both models. If you're going to spend 520 points on porting around, like, you need to have some use of having a single monster that can hold things down and get extra uses out of it. But anyway, that's my thought. I want to try 2 Mauls. I already have a second Hellmaul being painted. So yeah, thanks for listening.